So, Coach, you talked about the values that you had from the YMCA, how important those were, the family and character. But you've also got an Olympic gold and Olympic silver medal, in addition to a lot of other things. Which one would you give up? The lessons you learned at the YMCA or your Olympic gold and silver?
Ooh. That's tough, man.
That's a tough one. That's a tough one. I can't give up my values. I can't give up my character and my values, because that stays with you for the rest of your life. That's kind of who you are. Winning a gold medal was great, and I love it, and it'd be hard to take that from me.
I wouldn't try.
Yeah, right. But wrestling is really, it's really helped me become the man I am, as far as a husband, a father, a friend, a son. So it really kind of helped develop me, and just who I am today, and how I raise my kids. So no, I can't give up my the things that I learned and the person that I became in the process of being an Olympic champion is more important than any medal that I could ever win.
Kenny, one of the things that has always amazed me are watching the good ones that were great athletes able to make that jump and become great coaches.
Right.
And let's face it, not all great athletes can make that jump, right?
Right.
You've been able to make that transition. How difficult, or what have you seen as some of those obstacles of going from your competition days into becoming a full-time coach?
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy. It's not easy because I was a certain way, the way I trained, and George just hit me with this other day, and I know they're not me, right? And I can't put my drive in them. I can't put everything that I did to become who I am into them. I can just kind of give you my experience and and my just my focus and the things that I've learned, and try to teach that, and give that. But I think the biggest part of that, Mike, to me, is just coaching is a giving spirit, man. You got to give. There's the people that don't make that transition. They're probably they're probably a little more selfish than they would probably need to be, because you got to be giving. You got to be willing to give. And I was always, like, from the time I learned, of course, I think it just from learning how to be a teammate and how to give and wanting everyone around you to win, and that just kind of never left me. And I've got I still want people that are in our circle to win, but then also giving back to the sport that has been so incredible to me. My wife said I'm probably one of the most patient guys that she's ever met, and I think that's a big part of it, just being patient and not overdoing it and not crossing that line. As a parent, that's really been probably the toughest part of it, is being a parent and a coach, right? Because you've got to be somewhat edgy to get to the level that we compete at, right? You do. And so I kind of thank my wife, because there's times where I'm on that edge with my boys. I'm on that edge. If they're not giving it like I know they need to give it, like I recognize, and we recognize things that's not going to help you win. It's not going to, it's not, as a matter of fact, there's things that will get you beat, right? And so when I see it, of course, I'm going to step in and say it, right, and get it off my chest. But then there's times where I'm on that edge, I get past that edge, I'm over that line, and you got to come back. Right? I've seen tons of people being a coach cross that line. Coaches, parents, they're way over that line, right? And now they become detrimental to the kids and the sport, and I've seen it, right? And so there's times where of course I'm over that line, and my wife brings me back, or I kind of bring myself back, but you kind of have to be on that line to get there, right? But you also got to recognize when you cross the line.
Well, Kenny, I hope that a lot of our coaches and folks that follow us hear that message.
Right.
You know, that's absolutely huge.
Right.
We see it in coaches, we see it in parents, we see it all
Right.
the time. And
Yep.
this sport has the way of bringing that out of people, right?
Right.
Just the intensity alone, the connection.
Yeah.
People are so personally involved and invested in the sport. You alluded to something just a moment ago, which I've had the opportunity to share as a dad coach. A huge challenge in your career.
Right.
How did you approach that? What were your thoughts being that dad coach along the way?
As far as coaching the boys,
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, that was just it. You know, I had to recognize that their dreams wasn't my dreams wasn't their dreams.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I had a dream early to be an Olympic champion, and maybe they don't. Right. So I can't put that in them. I can't. All I can do is I introduce you to the sport because I think it's a great sport. It's been great for me in my life. I know the characteristics that it builds, but I can't. Everyone's got their own journey. You know, every man's got their own journey. I don't care where you come from, who your dad was, who your mom was. Every person has got their own journey, and you just really can't. I can't put my journey into theirs, right? I can just give them my experience, and so I try to stay in tune with that and try to focus on just helping them be the best person that they can be, and not having the expectations that I had of myself to a certain extent, which gets hard, right? Because I, like I said earlier, you know, the things that will get you beat and the things that will help you win. You know it, right? I mean, there's, especially at our level, I can see the fine points. And so I try to give them that. And then when I don't get it, when I don't see it, then it's frustrating. Right? Mm-hmm. It's frustrating. But then I got to check myself and say, okay, well, I can't force it, right? I just got to let them build and let them do their thing.
Kenny, Coach, how do you do that?
Go ahead, Mike.
How do you, when you, I had a coach call the other day, and he was pissed off about his bronze, right. and I was standing my ground, and we just, at the end of the call, and it turned out I was wrong,
right?
And I had to, but I wasn't prepared for going to that level of intensity. And in wrestling, we can get intense really quick. Real quick. How do you recognize it for you, and how do you come back to being on that line as opposed to over? Work for you.
Yeah. I think just being humble with it, and just I think recognizing if you're wrong, own up. Own up to it, right? Because I've been wrong. I've been wrong in the way that I've coached. I've been wrong in certain things that I've done. But I wasn't afraid to admit it, and I wasn't afraid to say I'm sorry. If I did something that wasn't right or got taken the wrong way, and even referees, man. One of the things that I do, and I did it, man, from the time I was little, and I did it as a coach. And Mike, you might have seen that. If I'm at a tournament as a coach, I'm going to make sure that I put my eyes on every referee there, and I'm going to go up to them, and whether we had problems or not, I'm going to shake your hand as a man. I said, man, I'm thanks for being here. Great job. I know it's not an easy job, but I'm going to let you know that I see you, and I appreciate you being here. Now, I've always done that from the coaching kids. I always try to make it a point to go put my hands and shake hands with every referee that's in the gym. I'm on the mic. I don't know if you see me do that. At the end of the tournament, I'm going to come find you if I can. And
shoot, Kenny, I thought it was just me that you loved.
I don't say I don't love them. I'm not going that far. But I respect them.
Fair enough.
I respect them.
Fair enough. Hey, I got to ask you this before we get through too far, because there's so much I'd like to ask you, and love for I love your stories, your background, the depth in the sport. But obviously, wrestling is so much about the connection, the networks, the friendships that we make. You had an incredibly special relationship with Dave Schultz, and I watched that I
Yeah.
was there at the time you competed at those arenas, whether it was Topeka, Kansas,
Yeah.
or I think it was Pensacola, Florida.
Right.
You know, where the trials were taking place, and it was the time that there's a bit of a torch change, right?
Right.
Handing it right, and the way that you guys handled that, I mean, you don't see that in sports very often. That
Yeah.
was special, and
Yeah.
I'm sure that it was more than superficial or just for the cameras. This was about a true friendship.
It was probably a more of a respect level,
Mhm.
and just great recognizing great. I think, we go way back. I mean, Schultz he was at OU when I was being recruited out of high school, right? And so he was actually the last guy I talked to before I made my decision on what school I was going to.
Whoa.
Yeah, yeah. And him and Mark picked me up on my recruiting trip to OU. So we kind of go back, and really the only reason I didn't go to OU, one of the reasons I should say, not the only reason, but probably one of the reasons is I couldn't. They had Mesker at the weight class.
Mhm.
I just, and I wanted to start right away. I didn't want a red shirt. I never did red shirt coming out in college. So I wanted to come out. I was done with high school, and I wanted to get on that level and compete. And so I didn't want to sit. If I'd have went to OU, I would have had to sit behind Mesker. They either had to cut to 34, which wasn't happening, or go up to 50, which I was too small at that time. So the best bet to go to OU probably would have had the red shirt that year. And I didn't want to, so I wanted to come out firing. So Leroy had graduated from Oklahoma State, and so there was an opening at 42, and I could come in and start. And so that was probably the reasons why I chose, or one of the reasons I chose Oklahoma State. But yeah, Dave and Mark they picked me up on recruiting trip, and so I got to hang out with them, and of course I was a fan. I was already a fan. I mean, Schultz was a All-American at Oklahoma State his freshman year.
Mhm.
And so I watched him wrestle, right? So I was a fan. Kind of growing up. He was before me. So I recognized how good he was. And I think once we started competing, I think he realized that I was kind of the guy that was coming up that was going to push him and going to challenge him. Me and Lee Kemp are really good friends. And I just was talking to him just the other day, maybe 2 days ago. And we were talking about that whole dynamic between him and Schultz, and then me and Schultz, and how they kind of fed into each other. I mean, Schultz kind of was losing at camp, caught him, passed him, and then I did the same thing with David. So it was an interesting story how that played out. But yeah, it was more just respect and love for the sport, and that's kind of how we were freaking fierce competitors.
Mhm.
Fierce competitors. But when it was over, we would always look at each other, give each other a hug, and say, "Man, we'll see you the next time around." And his wife was always Nancy was always cool, and his son Xander is a good friend now. So it's I think it's just the love for the game that really kind of brought us together.
How about the relationship? Not to put you on the spot too much, but relationship with Nate Carr. You had some fierce battles with Nate along the way. I see you guys chat together now and then, and
I still don't like the guy.
you can't not like Nate Carr.
Right. Now Nate is cool, man. We're good friends. We go back and forth, and he, it was just, I think the biggest part of that is he brought out the best in me.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have achieved the level that I achieved if I didn't have a Nate Carr. Right, because that dude made me get up in the morning. They made me stay up at night, right? And I had to study. I had to train. I had to be focused. If I wasn't focused, then there's no way I was getting past Nate Carr. I mean, the last time we wrestled, I beat him in 1987 World Team Trials, and then that was the last time we competed. And then he went down to 49 to make the Olympic team. But if I wasn't ready to compete, I was getting my butt kicked. Right. And so I think it's the same thing. I think we just kind of recognized that we were great for each other, and we brought out the best in each other. And that's something that, of course, when he went down, we trained together. Mm-hmm. So that's what really kind of turned our relationship around a little bit is when he went down, and then we trained together. and he made the Olympic team. We both made the Olympic team, and then we were teammates, and so that was kind of what really kind of moved our relationship into another level.
Kenny, do you see the same kind of cross training today? Because we interviewed Gable for our Legend series, and he's like, I would go anywhere that I needed to go to get competition, or I would bring people in to get the right competition. How important that was. I mean, you're on the elite level of coaching today. How often does that happen where we cross-pollinate these ideas and these training environments?
Yeah, I think it happens probably more so now that we've got the national team than it did back in those days. We just didn't have the resources. I mean, guys were kind of on their own, and wrestling has changed a little bit, a little more resource in the game, a little more money in the game with the club teams, with Tide Mercury, with Sunkist Kids, and those guys that are helping these athletes further their careers. And so and then the national team is funded. So these guys are being able to bring these guys together and train, in one room and under one system, one coach. And so it's a little different. We didn't have that. We didn't have national team until '89, I believe. And so we were just kind of on our own, and how we kind of depended on, Sunkist Kids is kind of what really brought us together in that type of environment. So Art Martori is probably one of the guys that without that guy, man, I don't know how we would have made it,
Certainly a special individual. Art's done so much for our sport,
Right.
and it's guys like that. But the next thing I'd like to ask you, Kenny, is just kind of what would you say as a message from that guy that started in a small school in Oklahoma and moved his way through high school, college, won an Olympic title, coaching elite athletes today? What would you tell these coaches that are starting out if the question were asked to you, what would you like to know today, now that you have learned and you can share with these guys entering into the coaching field?
I think it's just, just being a student of the game, just really learning as much as you can, putting yourself in those environments. I think going overseas, being part of the national team, being a part of USA Wrestling, being a part of that network gives you that experience. I see a lot of these young coaches, and I think what really moves them to another level is they get the opportunity to be around the best guys in the sport, like the guys that the Dicks, the Taylors, the Cox, the JOs, these guys. They get a chance to be around these guys, right? So they kind of see how they're training, how they're moving, their habits. So I think just being involved as much as you can, and it's a year-round deal. I think some coaches that only go part-time is kind of, it's kind of hard for those guys to move to the next level. But to me, I think, I was always trying to learn as much as I could, right? I was Rick Tucci, we were really good friends, and we go way back, right? And then I would always go and talk to Rick, like even before, like way back before I even started beating Dave, I would go back and I'll talk to Rick and say, man, what are you guys looking for? What do you see out there? What keeps you off? What helps you to do your job, right? So I wanted to know, just his mindset, and I just like, Rick, at the end of the day, all I need from you is just to call it fair, right? Just call the thing fair and let us do our thing. And he was like, yeah, I don't want to do nothing. All I want to do is put up points. I don't want to have to influence one way or another, or, have a bad call here or there. I just want to be able to kind of just, facilitate the match, right? And so, but I think you got to learn as much as you can. You got to on all from the coachings, from the athletes, from the referees, from the administrators, the people that run the tournaments. I think you got to know and know the wrestling business side of it, right? And kind of be more business minded. And I think we need more of that in the sport of wrestling.
I think that's a tremendous insight and a great message, don't you, Michael, for our young coaches? Is like, know its entirety, know the sport from everybody's eyes, not just from a coach's.
Right.
But I do respect that from you, Kenny, because I do remember having conversations as an official where you were asking me questions, and I believe that you were sincere with those questions.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that perspective as a coach, and you only see it through the eyes of an intense coach, not knowing how tournaments run, or you're just in just a very narrow focus, I think it limits your growth as a coach.
That's right.
Mike, you might have some.
That's true.
Obviously, coaches, director of USA Wrestling. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no. What you've done is you've built the relationships with those officials,
So
that they would trust you and you could trust them to know that you could get the strategies that would help you score the points. And we just, for the first time ever, we've partnered with the U.S. Wrestling Officials Association to create an online officials education program for coaches. And it's 4 hours of hearing what coaches and officials are kind of talking about. So, I mean, you're way ahead of the game, because how many coaches were doing what you were doing, or athletes were doing what you were doing back in the day?
Right. Yeah. I didn't see it, but I know that they're a big part of the sport, big part of the game. Right. And without, because I learned early on, man, I think it's only been a few times that I even considered about quitting the sport. The first time I ever thought about quitting the sport, I was a young kid growing up in Oklahoma, of course, in the 60s. And I don't know if you guys heard this story, but, we had black teams, all black teams coming from the YMCA, my north side. And so we go to these tournaments, man, and it was brutal. It was brutal in the beginning. Sometimes we show up to the tournaments and we would not even be registered in the tournament. Like, we'd register and we get there and they're like, oh, well, you're not registered, right? And so it was clearly they didn't want, it was some racism a little bit. It was not wanting us to be at the tournament. So we kind of had to fight through that a little bit, well, a lot of it. And then there were times where the referees were just killing us. They were just like taking matches. It was unbelievable. It was really bad. And I remember one time I'd been wrestling for a few years and I was starting to become pretty good. And this one kid had been beating me. Like, he beat me like 3 times, right? He was a child prodigy. And Lou Gilpin, he was a tough little kid. And I out-wrestled him this one tournament, man. It was like the city tournament. I out-wrestled him. And the referee just freaking wiped me. I mean, it was bad. It was really bad. And then it was so bad that, like, even the people that were rooting against me felt bad for me. Right? And I come out the bed like, man, I'm sorry. Like, you don't even know, right? And so I'm in tears. I'm crying. And my dad, I'm talking to my dad. I'm like, I'm done. I'm done with this sport, because as a black kid, most kids, black kids were playing basketball, football, these other sports. Wrestling was just not a big sport for black kids, right? And so I was like done, man. I was done. I'm like, I'm just going to play basketball. And my dad was like, listen, I get it. I understand how painful it is and how frustrating it is, but don't let people drive you out of the sport. If you love this sport, let me deal with the referees and do with that. You just go work hard. And he said, I'll just tell you this. It just can't be close. It just can't be close. Go pin them. Take it out of the referee's hands. Right? And so from that point, man, I went back and I worked my butt off. I said, all right. And so we talked about him, and I love the sport. I was really starting to like it. So I went back and just worked my butt. So then from then on, I was on a different level. I was a different kid because I was afraid that the referee was going to take the match.
Thank goodness for Kenny Monday's dad, or Kenny Monday might not have ever gotten past middle school.
I'm telling you, dude, I was like, but then after that, they were like, man, what got into that kid? I was like wiping these kids out. And I'm like, pinning them first 30 seconds, I wasn't playing, right? I was a different kid. And so that really, that got me over the hump, man. It really did. It got me over the hump. And then from that point, I was always looking at the referees and look, man, like, shaking your hands, looking at them I want you to look me in the eye. If you're going to screw me, I want you to look me in the eye and screw me. You had to come back after the match and say, man,
Dude, this is good stuff. This is good stuff. That's fantastic. Look me in the eye if you're going to screw me, right?
So many of us don't understand why, in the last year or two, we've gone from George Floyd and companies and organizations are looking more at diversity and inclusion. And I think a lot of us, like, we're if we're white and we don't have a lot of exposure to diverse backgrounds, we might say, this is just overplayed. This is too much. But
you have some blind spots.
When you go back, right, and you hear these stories, you hear what you had to go through as a kid. Yeah. We worked with a coach from Kansas, and somebody said, "Oh, he got mad at a tournament," and I'm like, "Well, did the other coach? The other coach isn't talking with me. Why is he?" And he said, "Well, I go back to the '60s and '70s," and he started to talk about the systemic racism he felt. Yeah. He's like, "I went to college. I got out just so that I could come back and help other kids in my community go to college." Right. It's so fundamentally wrong what was taking place. And we're just now starting to understand how wrong it was and how widespread it was. Like, help me understand a little bit about what steps a coach like me that might not have that background, how do I make a difference? How do I tell my all-white team when we're going to competition, hey, you might be going to a tournament, there might be some black kids today that you're going to wrestle. They are the exact same as each one of us. How do we do that as coaches?
Yeah, I think, it starts with that communication, for sure. I mean, I was, and had to talk to a lot of kids growing up, right, when I would experience it. Like, I was on, like all-star teams in Oklahoma, and we get together. I might be the only black kid on the team, and then something happened, and then I'd call them out. I'm like, look, I explained to them how that made me feel, right? And then so it's growth, but it's communication. I think one of my things is I think we need more black referees, right? That's something that I've always kind of talked to USA Wrestling about. I mean, we got to go recruit people. We got to go recruit these ex wrestlers. There's a lot of wrestlers out there. They don't go into coaching and they don't go, they still wrestlers, right? Once you're a wrestler, you're always a wrestler. I think if we go and recruit more and just make an effort toward it, and not just let it come to us, then we can make a difference there. We can get more black officials in the game, and more black kids. I just think that one of the organizations I joined, Black Wrestlers Association, BWA, I mean, that kind of originated behind the George Floyd murder. And so we were just kind of frustrated with what was going on and that whole thing. And so we kind of got together and said, look, what can we do to push this conversation and let people know that there's issues that we need to get better at as a country, and it's not over. Matter of fact, I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and you guys have probably heard about the 1921 massacre on Black Wall Street, Greenwood. I'm a direct descendant of that. So my great grandparents had businesses on Greenwood. My wife, she's going back to Tulsa tomorrow, or tonight, for the centennial, the 100-year celebration. Well, it's not a celebration. It's just a recognition of the 100 years. But I think the president is going to Tulsa and that whole thing. But I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, so that story has never been. It hasn't been told widespread. I don't know if you guys know the story. But now you got LeBron James is doing a documentary on it. I think Westbrook is doing one on it. But that's kind of where we came from, right? And so I think the conversation just has to be had. I think it's if you don't have it with your kids, you don't let them know that how to handle those situations, then you're gonna have blind spots. You're gonna have blind spots, and we all have them. And those sometimes the conversations are hard to have, but if you don't have them, then you'll run into those issues. You run into problems. So even going to Oklahoma State, man, I was growing up and probably mostly white team, and I had great teammates. I was a senior when John Smith was a freshman, and we've had several conversations just about race relations through the years. And so the only way you get better is to get better and to learn and not be afraid to open your mouth. When you see something, if I see something that's wrong or that's not, I'm gonna speak to it, right? If I see it, I'm gonna speak to it. I'm not gonna just blow it off and go, oh, that's just that guy. It's just how he is. I'm gonna speak to it, right? I have a hard time with. I don't like to call people out, but they watching the brands, and mean, sometimes they're just irate to the officials and the other coaches, and it's like, man, what? That's not what you should be teaching your kids. That's not the example you should be setting. You guys are the best in the country, right? And I just don't like the way they set those examples sometimes. I think that some people, they just look the other way and let them do their thing, right? But that's not that's not the way we should be doing things, right? And so I just don't like the way they go off on the officials sometimes, and they it's tough to watch. I love what they bring. I love the intensity they bring. But you look at their kids, and other kids want to shake the other coach's hand, other kids' hands, or they're so about like it's us against the world type of mentality, right? But we taught as kids, sportsmanship. When they implemented that rule where the kids got to go shake the other coach's hand, they did that for a reason, right? They did it for a reason to teach sportsmanship. Those guys are the opposite of that. You never see those kids going to shake the other coach's hand after the match. They just don't do it. Why? I don't know.
Kenny, what's the bottom line as far as a coach? What do you want your athletes to take away from the sport, from the lessons that you bring? What is it that you want your athletes to know?
Well, I want them to know that wrestling is just a great sport, man. It's a great sport. It's worldwide. I'm talking to this guy now from this Iranian gentleman from Iran. He lives in London, and is wrestling for his organization is Wrestling for Humanity. But wrestling teaches you so much about how to be a good person, right? From the hard work, from the dedication, from the discipline, the sportsmanship. Sportsmanship is real, and it's something that every kid should know. We can't turn the other way. Sportsmanship is real, and it carries a lifelong lesson. And so I think those are the things that I think are the most important things in wrestling is character, sportsmanship, discipline, hard work, and respect. It burns me up when I see guys disrespecting athletes or coaches or referees. I just don't think that's the model that we should be teaching.
And that's really, we always brag about our sport, that it provides character.
Right.
And then we turn around and we're the ones who are the biggest, donkeys
Right.
sometimes
Right.
in the way. And I've been there, right? I've had my share of, emotional moments. And, we try to teach coaches now, like, hey, take 2 breaths.
Yep.
And then go talk. Like, find a tool that helps you, when you've crossed that line to come back.
Because kids are watching, man. Kids see it. And we're the examples. We want to set the examples, and they see it, right? And so, we want those guys to implement the best of our sport, not the worst of our sport.
How much were your coaches role models of that? I mean, Myron, I always say I was recruiting in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
I went to the Hall of Fame. It was really a slow day, and Myron said, it's a slow day. I'm going to shut it down. I'll take you over and show you the new wrestling room, and we're walking. Like, he was just that kind of guy. Like, So how much was, he and other coaches, how much were they the right type of influence on you, or sometimes did you have to learn from the wrong influences?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think, having those role models and those mentors. I mean, Myron was definitely a mentor. As I got older, Tommy Chesbro was my college coach, and he was a descendant of Roderick. And so, just being around those people that were doing the right things in sport, doing the sport the right way, holding guys accountable for their actions, but building men, taking guys from boys to men. And so, that's huge. It's a huge part of my development. From Ernie Jones being my high school coach. He was more, Ernie was more than a technical coach, right? He really taught me more about life and how to stay humble, how to handle press, how to handle that success. Because it got to a point to where it got really heavy as far as being who I was, just because I didn't lose a match in high school. So, and probably one of the highly recruited kids coming out, and so just trying to deal with success and and deal with people, and still being a fierce competitor and doing my thing and not shrinking from who I am, but trying to do it in a way that people see you as more than as a wrestler. I mean, people see you as a bright spot for the sport. Someone that really cares about the sport and cares about people. And again, it goes back to my YMCA days of being a great teammate. Because even though I was having a lot of success myself, I was dipping back in. And I had guys that started wrestling as sophomores and became state champions as seniors. The kids that I coach in Team Monday, I mean, these kids we probably put 15, 20 kids in college from West Point to Oklahoma State to Arizona State, all over the country. And I still communicate with those guys today, right? And they still call me Coach Monday, and these guys are raising kids now, and so we touched a lot of lives, and so that's just the thing that I wanted to leave in my legacy is who I am as a man, that I care, and I'm trying to give back to the sport as much as I receive from it.
Kenny, that's a good segue. Moving us up to speed, where kind of things are happening today. You were over across the pond with J.O., right? Yeah. And tell us a little bit about that, and what your thoughts are in that qualification for that weight class, the whole thing with J.O. I know that had to be a tough ride, right?
It was tough, man. Yeah. It was a really tough deal just because he was so close, mm-hmm. and the work that he put in, and the person that he's really kind of became through this process is admirable. I mean, he's really changed as a man, and his discipline is really really good, and so he earned it. He earned his way, and to lose by a point and not be able to go represent your country is heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking, it really was. And I just saw a poster, I think, a couple of days ago, and it had the Olympic team, the women, the men, and the Greco, right? And he wasn't on that poster. That broke my heart again, right? Because I know the work that he put in to have that right to represent the country, right? And so, yeah, it was a tough one, but it's life. It's life. You build from it. You try to be better from it, and you got to move on. You got to move on and try to get better with it. I was really appreciative of USA Wrestling's commitment to support, right? I mean, Rich Bender came, and of course we had Zadig was there, and we had a full referees. We had a pretty good staff of doctors and trainers that came over just for him, mm-hmm. and so that was very a good thing, because he felt like that he had the support of USA Wrestling. And sometimes, as athletes, you kind of get a feeling that they're choosing sides, or they're pulling for one guy or the other, And I had the same thing with Schultz coming up, mm-hmm. I thought, because Dave and Mark were they're veterans. I mean, they were proven, right? And so I kind of felt like USA Wrestling was kind of really trying to promote those guys before the trials had even started, right? And so I kind of had to fight through that deal and feel like that they had my back as well. And so that it felt good that they were there to support. And I told Rich Bender I was glad that he was there to support, and it made a big difference.
I know that from the very top, from the IOC, et cetera, that they went geographic, build for the Olympics and representation. But is something wrong with it? That, I mean, when a guy like J.O., is there something missing here? You got a guy like J.O., or anybody for that matter, on our freestyle team, or right. maybe the Russian team, or whatever it might be, to not get there. I mean, we're trying to celebrate the greatest athletes. It seems to me, and I'm looking at it from the outside,
right? It's
like something's missing here.
Yeah. It definitely felt that way too. I know there's a process, and it is what it is. Mm-hmm. But it's a tough one, man. It really is. I don't know how to fix it. I really don't. I have a problem with it just being 6 weight classes. Mm-hmm. I think that's a tough deal. I think it hurts kids. I mean, you got these kids that get caught in between weight classes that are, trying to cut down in between. Every guys, the 61 kilo guys are just almost out of the sport.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta go up, they can't go down. And Jo is kind of in between. He's a tweener, really, And so it's a tough deal that we had to cut our weight classes to 6 and then go back up for the world championships. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Now it's a hard one to swallow, I think, for most anybody that's fairly connected to the sport.
Right.
We're obviously not going to change it, but
right.
Hopefully,
I thought they should have had a 2 second. If you're only taking 2 to qualify for Olympic Games, it should be a 2 second.
Yeah.
You can't let guys just have the luck of the draw, and they get there. You're not the second best guy in the weight class.
Very well said.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We should have the, especially in that situation, they should have the 2 best guys in the weight.
Mm-hmm.
So
no, that I totally agree. That one, it doesn't make sense either, but
right.
Again, I guess we can voice our opinion and we can certainly vent here, but Kenny, what's your last message? Speak to our coaches out there. Give us some Kenny Monday insight, something that nobody knows about. Tell us something, man.
It's kind of hard to tell you guys something that you don't already know, right? but it's almost impossible to teach what you don't know, right? And I tell these guys all the time, you can't teach what you don't know, and so and really you can't go where you're afraid to go too. So I just think you got to educate yourself. You can't be stubborn. You can't think you know it all. I'm 59 years old, almost 60, and I'm still learning. I'm in a room just yesterday working out with a kid. And I can still roll. I feel good about that. But I still learn, and I try to learn from everybody. I learn from you. I learn from Mike. I learn as much as I can, and I try not to put myself in a position of where I'm Olympic champion, world champ. I get all the answers. I know everything. I know a lot. I've learned a lot. I feel like I've mastered this sport, but I still can learn, right? I can still learn, and I still try to stay humble as much as I can and try to not to put myself. And one of the things that would work against me sometime is I'd be in the corner. It'd be a kid tournament, right? I'm in the corner of this kid, and the referee is on the mat, and he's going to make sure that I don't influence the mat. I don't. If I question him, he gets pissed off. He's like, "Are you trying to bully me? Or you trying to?" No, I'm just a regular guy. Ask a question, right? And so I get on both sides. I get some of those guys that want to prove that they're not intimidated. Right? They go the opposite. And the guys that are intimidated. And they give me the call. So it's like, how do you win? How do you win? It's just, it's we got to continue to build this thing, man, from the ground up and be more business minded and try to get more opportunities for these young kids coming up to wrestle in this greatest sport in the world, man. It's I think, and I tell people this all the time, I think it's the best time to be a wrestler. I think it's in my lifetime, it's the absolute best time to be a wrestler, just from the opportunities that we have and the internet and how much you can learn and the teams that we have. And these guys our senior level guys, man, these guys are good. They're good. And they're not only good wrestlers, but they're good people. The Burrows and the Takes and the Dakes and the Taylors. I mean, these guys are good people, good family guys, man. And I've seen these guys since they were kids, right? Since they were 10-year-old kids, talking to their parents back when they were 10. I remember talking to David Taylor's dad at Tulsa Nationals. He almost thought about coming to Texas at one time. He ended up going to Ohio, but we were just talking, and I'm trying to give them the blueprint and what you need to do for your kid and giving us some advice. And so to watch those kids now that are competing for gold medals, it's really special. It's really special.
I'm going to give Mike a chance to ask a question here, and we'll kind of draw close to it. If you've got anything else, Mike, certainly. But I'll tell you this, Kenny, I know that I'm a better man because I know you. I appreciate you. I've always respected you as an athlete, as a coach, and what you've given to the sport. And I know that there's a lot of people that have been touched by your greatness of being a great athlete and being a great coach. And thank you for, giving back so much as you have over the years. And I certainly didn't realize you were almost 60. Now I'm really feeling old, dude. But we so much appreciate you and what you've blessed us with. Mike, any closing thoughts or updates?
I gotta go catch a plane too. I gotta go catch a plane.
I've got the job
this weekend.
I've got the best job in the world. I get a chance to work with guys like Kenny Monday and Mike Haggerty. So if there are coaches that want to reach out or find out more about you, or maybe even try to get in touch to get some advice,
I'm accessible.
What's the best way to do that?
Instagram, just direct message me, Twitter. You can find me, or I'm at UNC, and so you can. I'm not hard to find.
Awesome.
I'm not hard to find.
Thank you so much.
I'm willing. I'm willing to help in any way I can. I do camps, clinics, that kind of thing, and or just I'll get people just calling just to ask about how should they raise their kid, right? Whether he's a beginner, whether he's a little superstar, because those guys need to be managed. Even if you got a superstar kid, they need to be managed in a different way, and that's just being honest. These guys are bringing them up, right? And so some of the parents never wrestled; they just got a special kid, and so those kids need to be managed as well. They need to be, kind of led in the right direction and give some good direction in how they, succeed in the sport. So
thanks.
Well said, Kenny. Mike, thanks for being on with us again today. Of course, Kenny, thanks for joining us. We'll let you get on that airplane.
Yep.
Keep in touch. And we thank all the coaches, of course, for joining us. And we appreciate you tuning in with today with Olympic champion Kenny Monday. But we'll be back here soon with another edition of our Coaches Council Heads Up. Thanks for joining.
Sounds good, guys. God bless.
Yeah.